Hi everyone, welcome to my presentation. In our work, we explored a new form of artificially inflating engagements on social media posts using what's called reciprocity abuse. This is where people get together in groups to like and comment on each other's posts, but this is done in a very organized manner. These groups are known as pods, and this is a tactic that's mainly used on Instagram. This work is done by myself, I'm Janit Veerasinghe, and my colleagues Bailey Flanagan, RVL Stein, and our advisors Damon McCoy and Rachel Greenstadt. Social media has become a vital part in our day-to-day lives, especially these days. Social media platforms employ some sort of a curation algorithm. This algorithm brings relevant content to the top of our news feeds and increases user engagement. Now, until mid 2016, Instagram had a chronological feed, meaning that you will see all of your friends' posts in the order that they were posted. But later, they moved to a curated feed. Most of these curation algorithms, among other things, use the number of likes and comments that a post receives in their computation. Now, over the past several years, we have seen a wide array of tools and services that have sprung up that promise to increase your likes, comments, and followers on social media platforms. These include different scripted tools, like farms, and collusion networks. The harms of these manipulation attacks range from increasing the reach of influencers' deceptively promoted content to actually amplification of extreme political rhetoric. Social media platforms have been getting better at mitigating some of these strategies. The automated likes from like farms or from compromised or bot accounts are relatively easy to detect. One of the latest approaches that people try to game these curation algorithms and avoid detection is through pods. So, what are Instagram pods? They are groups that are available online where members of the group reciprocally engage with each other's Instagram content. Individuals in these groups like and comment on other links that are posted in these groups, and after doing so, they can post their own link to the group to receive engagement from other members. These groups are very organized and have a set of rules that individuals must follow, and some are very large with thousands of members. These groups are formed on Instagram chats, Facebook, and on Telegram. However, Telegram is the most widely used platform to host pods. This could be due to a couple of reasons. Facebook is known to have removed at least 10 pod groups in the past, and Instagram DM groups are limited to 50 members, which makes it less scalable. On the other hand, Telegram groups can be very large, and it's not under Facebook control. And most of these large groups use Telegram bots to enforce the different group rules and to prevent what's called leeching. And if you Google for what are Instagram pods, you will see a lot of articles explaining what this new Instagram hack is and how it will get you more likes. Some complete with video tutorials. Before going any further, let's see how a typical pod works. First, you need to find a way to join a group. There are a lot of blog posts online that have curated lists of active pod groups, and you can pick your favorite and join them. Once you join a pod group, you can see that most of them have a set of rules specifying what you have to do. For example, this is a comment and likes pod, and you have to like and comment on the 10 previous posts of this group before posting your own link. These are known as DX10 pods, where DX10 stands for done times 10. Once you have followed the group rules, you can post your own link and receive likes and comments from total strangers. Now, what happens if you don't follow the rules? Most of these groups have bots that will warn and ultimately kick you from the group for not following group rules. This is an overview of our work. First, we collected metadata and messages that were posted on around 432 pod groups that were hosted on Telegram, and we analyzed the landscape of these pods. Then, we collected Instagram data associated with these pods and another set of control posts in order to train a classifier to detect pod engagement. Then, we analyzed the efficacy of these pods to answer the question, can using pods actually increase the amount of organic interaction that you will receive? We used an iterative approach to collect group metadata and messages that were posted in pods. Key observations that we made when learning about pods is that usually links to these pod groups appear on blogs that maintain curated lists, and also on some social media marketing websites that host such pods. We also saw that people advertise new pods on already existing pod groups or similar social media discussion groups. So, to discover pods, we started with a seed set of pods that we found through Google search. Then we searched through all the messages in these groups to discover links to new Telegram groups, and searching for pods and filtering out other unrelated groups. We cycled through this process 3 times to collect new pod groups. I will briefly describe the approach in the next few slides, but more details are available in our paper. Next, we queried Google with a couple of search queries that we found to yield pod listings and collected the links from all of these websites that appeared on the first 4 search result pages. Then, we used the Telegram Group API and the Message API to collect group metadata and messages that appeared in these public groups. These details include things like the group username, group title, description, and message content and timestamps. Now, for our first iteration, since we know that all of these groups are actually pod groups, we did not have to do any filtering, and therefore we skipped the third step in our pipeline. In our next iterations, we extracted the Telegram group URLs that appeared in these messages to discover more pods. Now, not all of these groups are Telegram pods. Some groups are about betting, cryptocurrency, pornography, and various other topics. So we used a classifier that we trained on a manually labeled set of data to filter out such groups. Like in our first iteration, we used the Telegram API to collect group metadata from these newly discovered links. Although we filtered out some unrelated groups in our earlier step, there are still other groups that are not pod related in these new URLs. After collecting the group metadata, we can determine if these groups are pods by observing their group title and description. To do this, we used a combination of heuristics. For example, does the term DX or engagement pod appear in this group? Similarly, we can remove groups that are obviously not pods by using heuristics. We manually label the remainder of the groups that were not captured by our heuristics. We ran this process for 3 iterations and discovered 432 pods. Then we used a semi-automated approach to go through these pods and annotate different attributes. First, we determine the engagement type of the pod. Some groups only require you to do like interactions. Some require you to comment, and some others require you to both like and comment. We also identified 3 different types of pod groups. I previously showed an example of a DX type group, where members have to interact with the N previous posts. Time pods require you to interact with all the links that were posted in the N previous hours. This could be usually 6, 12, or 24 hours. And round pods are a bit different. They operate at a scheduled times and give the members 1 hour window to interact with all the posts that were posted in that round. We also noticed that some pods have entry requirements. specifying the minimum number of followers that you must have to join the pod. There were some pods that only allowed users who belong to a certain niche, such as users who post things about fashion, food, travel, etc. Overall, we collected details from 432 pod groups and found that 1.8 million unique Instagram posts were posted that belonged to 111,000 Instagram users. We also saw, as shown in this graph, that the number of pod posts have been increasing over the last 3 years. We also found that most of these pods were DX type pods, and the majority were like only or like and comment only pods. Here are some other statistics about these pods. Each pod on average had around 900 users. Some pods had as much as 17,000 users. We also saw that some pods were very active when we were collecting data, and some have died down. The lifespan of the pods ranged up to around 3 years. The activity level of pods varied too. There were some pods that received over 4,000 messages per day. These are some statistics about the users who used pods. For each distinct pod that a user used, they sent an average of around 11 messages, although half of the users sent an average of 3 messages or fewer. On average, users advertised their post in a pod within an hour after posting them on Instagram. So, to recap, what we saw was that the number of users who are using pods have increased rapidly over the last 3 years. We also see that a very structured, an organized ecosystem complete with very specific terminology has been evolving. The next question we wanted to ask was, given an Instagram post, is it possible to predict if that post had received interactions from a pod? Now, to build a classifier, we need to build a dataset with positive samples. In this case, these are posts that have received pod interactions, and also control samples. The ideal control samples are posts from users that have never used a pod. But since we don't have data about all the pods that are out there, we cannot know for sure if a given post or a user has not participated in a pod. The next alternative is to select a random sample of Instagram users. However, we observed that a purely random selection of Instagram users have a significantly fewer engagements than pod users. For example, using one's follower count as a proxy for all other forms of engagements, we see that a random group has a significantly fewer number of followers. Therefore, any classifier that we would train with this control group would produce many false positives, especially among Instagram users who have high profile engagement but have not used pods. To demonstrate that it is possible to design a classifier that does not produce these types of false positives, we selected our control group so that they would have similar engagement levels as our pod users. While this is not the average Instagram user, doing so, we are able to show that it is possible to identify pod interacting posts even when the posts have similar levels of engagement, which is a harder classification problem. So to form this control group, we selected posts from a follower count matched user base, ensuring that the distribution of follower counts of users are the same between both the control and positive classes. Specifically, we created 2 datasets. One where the positive samples are from posts that were posted in comment and like pods, and the other where the positive samples are from like pods. We designed our classifier based on the hypothesis that different interactions users received through pods would be quantitatively and qualitatively different from the interactions that they would receive organically. We used the following different features to capture this. We included comment count, likes count, and the ratio between these two as features. We also included features to capture the time distribution of comments. We anticipated that because of the systematic nature of pods, the timing patterns of engagements might be different when compared to organic posts. Here, we define zero equilibrium to be the first 24-hour span after the Instagram post is posted in which it receives zero comments. We also anticipated that the comments made as a result of pod interaction would have a different linguistic signature than comments that were made organically. To capture this, we included features from two topic models, and the entropy of these topic models, and also the entropy of the TF-IDF values of the posted comments. Here we used entropy to measure the diversity of the topics and the words that were present in comments. We use these features and train 3 different classifiers on our 2 datasets. And here are the results. The key observations here are that the random forest classifier performs best on both datasets. The performance results from the comments and like dataset performs better across all classifiers. This behavior is expected since our time series and content features are based on comments. We also performed a feature analysis to find out which features were the most important in making predictions. We present the approach we took more detail in our paper, but I will present the highlights here. For predicting posts from comment and like pods, comment content features were more important, especially content that was super generic, that included words like short, nice, great, were indicative of pod interactions. On the other hand, content that included more conversational words like people, cool, congratulations were indicative of control posts. Some of these content level features were also important in predicting engagements from like pods. Other than that, high likes count and a skewed comment to like ratio was indicative of interactions from like pods. We also analyzed a sample of misclassifications of our classifiers, and more details of this are available in our paper. So far, we looked at what pods are, how pod usage have been increasing, and we also showed that it is possible to predict which posts received pod interaction. We should also point out that social media platforms who have a far richer user dataset will be able to create better models to predict pod usage. Next, we want to try and answer another question. Do pods actually work? And more importantly, are the interactions that you receive, are they only from other pod users, or do you end up eventually gathering more organic interactions because of the high likes and comments you receive on pod posts? To do this analysis, we selected 800 users that we know to have used pods and collected all of their timeline posts. Using our classifier, we can identify the first post that a user posted on a pod. We consider all the posts before this post to be baseline posts. These are posts that have not received any pod interaction. Out of the following posts, some may have received pod interactions and some may have not. Here we compute 2 values for each user. Alpha is the average number of comments per post that they received on posts after their first pod interacting post, weighted by the classifier probability of it not being a pod post. And beta, similarly, is the weighted average of the number of comments per post received before the first pod post. The ratio of alpha over beta represents the increase of activity on a user's profile due to pod posting. These results show that for most users, the ratio is greater than 1, indicating an increase in organic comments after pod interaction. And on average, this value is about 5-fold. The increase in the alpha-beta ratio could have happened due to many factors. To control for these confounding factors, we ran a linear regression with the following variables and alpha beta ratio as the outcome variable. Out of these variables, only one has a magnitude of practical significance. It is the proportion of Instagram posts in the pod interacting period that were posted in pods. This indicates that the more one user posts in pods, the more organic interactions that they would receive on other posts that have not been posted on pods. So, to recap, in our work, we analyzed the landscape of Instagram pods, a new approach that individuals are using to artificially inflate engagement on social media posts. We saw that pods are relatively easy to join to, and an increasing number of users are using pods. We also saw that interactions from pods can be differentiated from organic interactions. Coupled with richer data, especially user network data from social media platforms, we will be able to build more accurate models that could be deployed to identify pod usage. We also saw that using pods seemed to increase the organic interactions that one receives, on average, by about 5 times. And that concludes my presentation. I would like to thank everyone who helped us in this project, my co-authors, and the reviewers who gave a lot of valuable feedback, and our funders. And I would like to take any questions that you would have. Thank you.